Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Women with Wings podcast, proudly brought to you by TiE Bangalore. This series is dedicated to honoring, amplifying, and supporting the entrepreneurial odysseys of TiE women entrepreneurs. The Women with Wings podcast stands as a unique initiative championing the release of boundless potential, embracing risks, and pursuing audacious aspirations. Join us as we delve into inspiring stories that celebrate the spirit of entrepreneurship and the remarkable journeys of TiE women entrepreneurs. And today, I am so excited to welcome Sandhya Vasudevan. Sandhya is a seasoned global executive and independent director on various boards. In the startup ecosystem, she's the TiE Bangalore board member and fintech chair. She's also an IIMB NSR CEL mentor and member of the Mumbai Angel Network. Sandhya also contributes to a national think tank. Sandhya, it is such a pleasure to have you here today with us.
My pleasure to be with you, Dhruti, and to contribute to Women with Wings.
Yes, super excited about the conversation. So, Sandhya, to get us started, would love to understand how has your journey across financial services influenced your approach to strategic business model innovation and digital transformation?
That's a mouthful. And let me just start with a little bit of my background. I've been in the corporate world for over 35 years. And then in the last couple of years, I've been very much part of the startup ecosystem. In the 35 years, I've been part of the TVS group, setting up their in-house finance companies. So in a way, it's an internal startup. So it literally grew the team to whatever it was. And then I moved on to setting up the Guardian Royal Exchange AXA offshore entity, which is from 0 to 250 when I left the company. I then moved on to Thomson Reuters, where I grew the organization from about 200 to 10,000 people before I joined Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank, I had, and even in Thomson Reuters, multiple roles, and I'll come back to it as I tell my stories. But in a way, it was entrepreneurial because what you're looking at, Thomson Reuters grew as a result of acquiring multiple companies, integrating them, and making them into a single whole. When I joined Deutsche, I had multiple roles. One was the global head of business engineering. So for a large international bank, it was good fun. But I also headed their offshore unit. I also landed up at a different point in time being part of the onshore banking. As part of that initiative, we also looked at the startup ecosystem. How could we partner with them? Very much part of that journey. And finally, I was part of the risk and regulatory setup, including third-party partnerships. From a risk and regulatory perspective, that is. Yeah. I then decided I needed to get out and try other things. And that's very much what I've done in the last 2.5 years or so. One of the single biggest area of focus for me was the startup world. It's got lots of positive energy where people are kind of playing out their dreams. They're looking at possibilities of how they could take it to scale. India's been very fortunate with the funding. It's been very fortunate with having a number of unicorns who come out, especially from Bangalore and in the financial sector, especially.
Yeah.
So that was my sweet spot. And TiE Bangalore was a very good place to work on that as well. And the NSR cell in IIM Bangalore is another place where you have the opportunity to nurture and support a whole host of young entrepreneurs as they build out their dreams. Yeah. In addition to that, I think independent directorships are interesting, but I think more importantly, the think tank gave me the perspective, what should we be doing today in order to be successful 20, 25 years from now? Yeah. And that actually is an interesting way to start framing the way we do things. So going back to your primary question on digitalization and the financial sector, in my early days, it was all about how do I get everything digitalized as you set up the organizations. and some of the journeys as you scale up, what happens. Uh, and that's been almost my journey through every one of my career switches as I've done, including when I was on the board of Swiss Re, which is where I was an independent director for almost 20 years.
Right. Amazing. So you've been an entrepreneur, you've been on boards, which has given you a great insight into the world of startups, right? Also, you've been an integral part of TiE Bangalore almost ever since you joined, the chapter. And in your role as the fintech chair and a mentor at IIMB NSR Cell, what trends do you anticipate in the fintech space? And I think being part of the think tank also gives you, as you said, that opportunity to interact with the policymakers or the decision makers in that sense. People who are actually crafting the future in a way, right? Not literally, but at least guiding star in that sense. So, what has been your experience across in that domain?
I think a couple of things. One is I've been more not so much an entrepreneur as entrepreneur. So you've always been within a group, but you're starting up something new. So right. Yes, the advantage is the group funds you. But the disadvantage is I've had to, for example, one of the years I went to the board 9 times before I got the funding to take things forward. Yeah, it's no different from going to multiple investors and saying, hey, fund me. So it's you're fighting for resources at the global level like anybody else. So going back to being the fintech space, between Bangalore and Mumbai, we have almost 50% of all the fintechs. So well over 10, 12,000 fintech startups are there registered. Mm-hmm. We obviously have a number of them who are unicorns out of Bangalore, especially. Right. Mm-hmm. The 2 most famous of them being Zerodha and Razorpay. But I think we've just scratched the surface, because the potential from this space is about 1.2 trillion of assets under management, which is a significant number. And if you're looking at revenues coming from this area, it's well over 200 billion. And you're not looking very far out. It's within this decade. Depends on which report you see. It could be 2028 to 2030. Within that time frame, you're having that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're looking at something like that, we've done a lot of very interesting things with the retail fintech startups, because they are B2C kind of startups. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in the wealth management space or whether it's payments, it's lending, it's all of them. It's a significant amount of work. There's also some amount of work that's been started in the insurance side of it, InsurTech, which is there. But I think what we have not even scratched the surface is things like embedded fintechs. So one of the areas that we are working on is the agri-fintech. Just to give you a sense of the size and scale. As soon as you say agri-fintech, the average person thinks, oh, bottom of the pyramid, it's that you have to fund them to alleviate poverty. Actually, it's not. It's a lot more of a bigger opportunity than we ever can imagine. You're looking at 600 million plus people who are involved in that sector. Right. It's not a small number. Even if most of them are on the bottom of the pyramid, it's a large number. Mm-hmm. Then looking at the level of digitalization that's happening, almost every Monday has got a digital footprint, which is out there. We may not fully appreciate it, we may not fully understand it. If you then look at this area and how much of agri-export that gets done, it's humongous. So for example, the export between India and UAE is around 28 billion. Okay. If you're looking at commodity trading, and you look at how we can look at cross-border opportunity, it's huge. Yep. You then look at something like, in the past, India is the second largest contributor of bamboo. But because of the way we had classified it, we couldn't really use it. Now the classification has been changed. Okay. But if you look at that goes into the circular economy. I'm so sorry about the dog, but it is outside my room. I can't do much. I think if I look at the circular economy And some of the numbers that have been thrown about in the sustainability circles is you're looking at funds which are about multiple $billion. And if India's agri financial sector gets into those kind of spaces, the potential to unlock wealth through that sector is going to be huge, and the impact is large. Right now, we are still working as a bottoms up. How do we support access to credit for to the tenant farmer and the like? But it gives you a kind of a flavor of what is available. If we do the same kind of an exercise for your supply chain, which goes into retail, it can be any sector.
Yeah.
Again, another kind of embedded finance, and the potential for unlocking is even larger. If you look at the kind of container services that are getting established, whether for the shipping routes or for the various airline sectors, and how much of stuff that's moving across only within the country, I'm not even talking about cross-border, and then you tie it back to potential growth, that's huge. The third area of embedded finance that we can potentially look at is healthcare. One of the startups that I was talking to was going after the pie, which says the average person doesn't get the full amount as part of the insurance claim. They are out of pocket significantly.
Yeah.
And the middle class can very easily slip below poverty if they're not careful. So what are the kind of financial tools that we can put in place to support this? And that was that was only one conversation. There are hundreds like this. So potential, huge. I'm not even talking about, if you go into the deep tech space, and I'll just touch on that, that's another area. India's financial sector needs to get involved in that, especially the quantum cybersecurity related stuff. By 2028, the RSA standards are going away. There are already been concerns of breaches in the security breaches there. So which means you have less than 15 years, but many of the countries have already got very strong quantum computing capability. It's getting built. India's digitalization journey needs to include the cybersecurity angle as we evolve. Sorry for being so technical, but as you can see, I'm very passionate about it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think your role kind of warrants that, right? Because of what you do, right? So also just curious in the sense that since you've been part of the think tank and the corporate world as well, how do you think the two can collaborate to address the challenges and foster innovation? Also given your expertise in digital transformation, you've been involved in social impact as well. So where do you see that?
I think the good news today is there's such a confluence of different ecosystems coming together. And one of the things that TiE does very well is bring different ecosystem players. So for example, I came from the corporate world, but very actively involved in the startup ecosystem. You have others who've kind of been very successful in the entrepreneurial world. They're also giving back to the ecosystem. Now, if I take just the few that you referred to, for the fintech space, you need to interlock with the banking, non-banking, insurance sector. You need to be working with the regulators associated with them. And we are already doing that. For example, RBI Innovation Hub, very tightly plugged in. We are actively engaged with IFSCA in Gift City because they're very ahead of the curve in terms of the frameworks that they've put in place. We've had conversations with them since March, and this is, things like the quantum frameworks have already been included in the way they are kind of looking at the incubators. The reality is, and then if you look at it in terms of the government interlocks, where appropriate, but there's also huge opportunity because you're looking at trying to solve the problem from a completely different angle. So if you're looking at the agri-fintech, you're unlocking data of ownership of land. You're unlocking data of what is the soil looking like, the water looking like. So you're looking at the macro information. You can do the IP associated with the biodiversity. So the potential for change in all of these spaces are huge. And I think it's just the beginning of the journey. So you can imagine how much of possibility exists if we just start chipping away at this right now.
Absolutely. And I think it's also about the inclusion bit, right? Because for the longest time, we've been focusing too much on the other aspects, right? The other startups, the tech startups. I think it's time that we kind of marry the two and say that, yeah, there's a lot more that can happen. And the potential is tremendous, as you rightly mentioned. So,
no, I think I'll just give you two examples of the inclusion.
Yeah.
One is, I think the Indian Intellectual Property Office is going after documenting what is there in each of the districts or the zillas, as the case may be. Say, what's the kind of produce, or it could be handicraft, it could be music, it could be whatever. But as soon as you GI tag it, the commercial potential goes up, especially if we can demonstrate adherence to the standards that we have thought of. And it goes up by 20, 30, 40%, depending on how we do that. But there's also the chance for India to take a leadership position in the globe, especially Global South, and how these things can be framed, because a lot of indigenous capability is needed for sustainability in the longer term. Because some of the practices of, let's say, take the millet story.
Yes.
They do not take that much of water. They don't need that much of water. They're more adaptable to the kind of environments that we operate in. So the potential to cross-pollinate science with inclusion, with technology, digitalization is huge. And I think there's a lot more conversation about how can we unlock it. And you're seeing young people and others with lots of experience stepping in and trying to solve the problem in as many different ways as they can. So it's a fun time.
Yeah, exactly. And even when I look at the media websites, we're barely scratching the surface when it comes to that. There are so many startups, especially in the rural areas, that are so heavily involved in making this change a reality, right? Making it happen. I don't think the people like us who are, sitting in Bangalore or Mumbai are even aware of the kind of change that is taking place at the grassroots level. And we are kind of in that unknown space, which is great. And at the same time, it's very inspiring when you read those stories, right? I think you are also aware of a few of those, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Let me share one of the startups that I saw from IIM yesterday.
Yeah.
Using the floral waste. I think a lot of NGOs have started kind of taking the floral waste to make agarbattis. That's more in the NGO sector. But if you take that for natural dyes, then there's a significant market of people who want natural dyes and floral dyes at that. It'd be fantastic. And then you have the next level of use. The flower fibers can be used for vegan leather. It can be used for, let's say, partitions within the house, to all kinds of other building material itself. And the way that can be spun is fascinating. It's absolutely incredible. That's, they've just started the journey on how to take that forward. If you look at it in terms of the food that gets created in different places, that's got the GI tag, potential value chain, it goes up the value chain. And if you look at the self-help groups, India's got, more than 600,000 people involved in that. And that's just at the top of the pyramid. I'm not talking about the number of individuals who are underneath that. But link that to the amount of money they are handling. I don't remember the exact number, but it is at least 30, 40 billion. We are not talking small numbers, but it's done in such a federated way. It's fascinating. It's absolutely, I think in the short term, in the very, very short term, it will be how do you get the adoption of digital tools at every level of the economy. You're seeing that happen with the children, especially the children who manage to go to school. They're all very comfortable with, the smartphones. So therefore, they are able to support the families as they're going forward. But it's the people who are not digital natives who will need that little extra support to get them to the spot that we want them to.
Absolutely. And, as the generation shifts, we will see those shifts as well in terms of what's important to us, what is truly sustainable in the choices that we make. I think that definitely is going to happen very quickly. Also, in the various roles that you've been playing, we barely scratched the surface when I introduced you. I think there's a lot more that you do. And you are an entrepreneur in yourself, right? With the various things that you're doing, I think you have an entrepreneurial spirit. I was also curious in terms of how do you really manage the demands of the diverse roles that you have? And I think there's a lot that entrepreneurs can learn from you, to be honest.
A couple of things. I think you need to define what your purpose is. It's not enough to have a good idea. You need to be clear about in the professional space, where do you want to go? Not just where do you want to go, but you need to be clear about why you want to go there. What drives you there? And then you need to recognize what are some of the barriers or beliefs that you already have, or what are some of the enablers that kind of push you in that direction. And then you can set your goals, whatever they may be. And when you set the goals, one of the things that, especially when I'm doing a lot of the mentoring, is I ask people to think about, what do you want to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Even if it's to sell the company, what do you want it to look like? What does your baby look like before you put it out there? Because the problem is, a lot of people think about it in less than a quarter. You cannot build an institution with that short-term thinking. You have to have a slightly longer view around that. I think the second one is, if you've got 20 ideas to play with, you have to prioritize. And you have to prioritize not just in terms of which one do I take up, but you also need to prioritize what can you actually handle. Because I'd love to do 100 things, but which one do I pick? And what is the outcome that I would be satisfied with? Because I was looking at it at the beginning of the year, and a couple of the things that I'm doing, I'm not even sure that I'll see light in my lifetime. But the reality is, there are spaces I still want to be involved with. So if I look at something like the evolution of quantum sciences and the kind of product solutions that'll come out in the next 25, 30, 40 years, it might revolutionize a whole bunch of things. But maybe it'll happen faster, it may take longer. I don't know. The reality is, we've got to be thinking through, what do you do today in order to be a leader in the world for some of these spaces? So I think I have the luxury of not having to work quarter by quarter. I think those are the kind of things that, if you're an entrepreneur, what do you want? The other fundamental thing that you have to be very clear about is, what are the values that you live by? Mm-hmm. Because one of the things when I do mentoring with a number of firms, they say, oh, we are doing this. What does it take for you to do that? Mm-hmm. What values are you setting for your company? Because when you recruit and grow, the others who join you will need to be aligned to that value. And if you are not clear about what is right and wrong for you and your organization, you cannot build the future with a number of other people who come and work for you. So I think these are some elements which are there. But of course, ultimately, scaling up, a whole lot of other things are there. But most importantly, the people dimension is what is the toughest, both for yourself and the people that you're carrying along.
And along with, the company that you're building, I think it's also important for you to recognize, who do you want to be as an entrepreneur, right? What is it that you stand for? And I think the mention is absolutely critical, because I think a lot of time the values will help you define your purpose, right? So that's definitely...
It's a yin-yang, because both, exactly. It'll have to. I think one element a lot of founders need to think through. Do you have a team?
Oh, yeah.
I don't invest in companies which hasn't got a strong founding team. Mm-hmm. For the very simple reason, a long time back, I I was just starting off with the offshoring work, and you're setting up the team and you're not well. What happens?
Yeah.
You can't just drop the ball at that time. Yes, you will drop the ball because health is more important than building something, because it can be very, very fundamental. And I, as an investor, would I want to put my money in a company where, okay, if this person comes under a bus, what do I do? That's a fundamental question that we ask. In today's world, some of the more practical things is, have you got your cybersecurity aspect, especially if you're in the financial sector? Please, that's a hygiene.
Yeah.
If you don't have that in place, I'm not sure you can succeed in the long term, because India cannot afford to have financial sector entities without that mindset.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that. So I think some of the very important points that you mentioned, I'm just going to summarize them, right? Is that be very clear about the purpose that you have, prioritize, right? And be very sure of the values. If you haven't done it, list them down somewhere. And be very clear about where you're headed with that. So I think some brilliant points right there, and it's definitely coming from your experience as well, which I'm sure has been a guiding star for yourself. So thank you so much, Sandhya, for sharing your journey, sharing some brilliant insights. I'm sure the entrepreneurs are going to have an amazing time listening to this. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And one more thing, keep a sense of humor. It doesn't matter. Things will happen. But so what? You can pick up and start again.
Exactly. Thank you.
That's
super important, right? All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you around.